In April 1944, 749 American servicemen died in the English Channel. They were not in combat. They were rehearsing for D-Day, 6 weeks before the real invasion. German torpedo boats found their convoy, and for reasons that were documented and preventable, no one stopped it in time. Then the American and British commands buried it. Survivors were ordered to stay silent under threat of court-martial. For decades, the families of the dead were told almost nothing. This is the story of Exercise Tiger and of a warning system that failed on every level it was supposed to protect. To understand what went wrong, you have to understand what Exercise Tiger was. In the spring of 1944, the Allies were preparing for the largest amphibious invasion in history. The landing at Utah Beach in Normandy would be carried out by American forces who had never done anything like it. So the Allied command decided to rehearse. They needed a stretch of English coastline that resembled Utah Beach. They found it at Slapton Sands on the coast of Devon. The resemblance was close enough that the exercise could be made almost completely realistic. To achieve that realism, 3,000 local residents were evacuated from their homes and farms so the military could use the entire area for live-fire training. General Dwight D. Eisenhower wanted the rehearsal to feel like a real battle. He ordered the use of live naval and artillery ammunition. He wanted the men to experience the noise, the fear, and the confusion they would face in France. That decision, to make everything as real as possible, is where the risks began to accumulate. Exercise Tiger involved around 30,000 troops. The plan called for them to load onto tank landing ships, slow flat-bottomed vessels known as LSTS, and simulate the channel crossing by taking a roundabout route through Lime Bay before landing at Slapton Sands. The route was designed to match the time and distance of the real crossing to Normandy. The problem was that these waters were not safe. German fast attack torpedo boats, known to the Allies as E-boats, operated out of Cherbourg on the French coast, just across the channel. They were built for exactly this kind of target. 100 feet long, powered by engines that could push them to 40 knots, armed with torpedoes and cannons. Against a convoy of heavily loaded, slow-moving landing ships, they were a lethal mismatch. The Allied planners knew the E-boat threat existed. Protection for the exercise was arranged. Royal Navy warships were assigned to patrol the entrance to Lime Bay and screen the convoy from attack. On paper, the convoy was covered. This is where the pattern of failures begins, and it is not one failure. It is several, stacked on top of each other. The first was the escort. The convoy of LSTs, designated Convoy T4, was supposed to be protected by 2 Royal Navy vessels. One of them, the corvette HMS Azalea, was present. The other, the destroyer HMS Scimitar, was not. Scimitar had been damaged in a collision earlier and had returned to port for repairs. A replacement was ordered, but it did not reach the convoy in time. So the convoy of landing ships, carrying thousands of men, was left with a single escort vessel instead of 2, in waters known to be patrolled by German torpedo boats. Verify, confirm escort vessel names and the exact sequence. The second failure was the one that turned a dangerous situation into a fatal one: a radio frequency error. The British headquarters ashore and the American LSTs in the convoy were operating on different radio frequencies. When British coastal forces detected the German E-boats entering Lime Bay and issued warnings, those warnings did not reach the American ships in the way they needed to. The convoy did not receive clear, actionable warning that enemy torpedo boats were among them. The one escort that was present had been given a different frequency than the ships it was protecting. A warning existed. It was transmitted. It did not arrive where it mattered. The men on the LSTs learned that they were under attack when the torpedoes hit. Shortly after midnight, on April 28th, 9 German E-boats slipped into Lime Bay. They had been drawn by unusually heavy radio traffic in the area, the signature of a large convoy. They found Convoy T4 strung out in a line nearly 3 miles long. The slow LSTs at the rear were the easiest targets. The E-boats attacked the unprotected tail of the convoy first. LST-507 took a direct torpedo hit and caught fire. LST-531 was struck by 2 torpedoes and sank within minutes. A third ship, LST-289, was hit and badly damaged but managed to reach harbor. The men aboard the burning and sinking ships faced a series of conditions that turned the attack into a mass casualty event. Many had not been properly trained in the use of their life vests. Some wore them incorrectly, around the waist rather than under the arms, so that when they entered the water, the weight of their combat packs flipped them face down. The water was cold enough to kill through hypothermia in a short time. Rescue was slow to arrive. Men who survived the torpedoes drowned or froze in the channel, waiting for help that came too late for hundreds of them. The exact death toll from that night, from the E-boat attack alone, was over 700 American servicemen. And the disaster did not end with the convoy. The rehearsal on the beach itself, the live fire exercise Eisenhower had ordered to be as realistic as possible, produced its own casualties. During the practice assault, some troops were killed by friendly fire from the supporting naval bombardment. The precise number remains disputed across sources, but it added to a total that most accounts place at 749 American dead across the full exercise. More Americans died at Slapton Sands rehearsing for Utah Beach than would die taking Utah Beach itself on D-Day. What happened next is the part that defines this story for a channel about warnings and accountability. The Allied command was faced with a catastrophe 6 weeks before the most important operation of the war. The invasion depended on secrecy and on morale. There was also a specific and urgent security fear. Among the officers aboard the convoy were men who held bigot clearance, meaning they knew the classified details of the D-Day invasion plan. 10 of these officers were initially unaccounted for after the attack. If even one had been captured alive by the Germans, the entire invasion could have been compromised. Search teams were sent specifically to recover their bodies and confirm that the D-Day secret had not been captured. All 10 were eventually accounted for. Once that fear was resolved, the command made a decision. The disaster would be buried. Survivors were ordered not to speak of what they had seen. Some were told they would face court-martial if they revealed the truth. The wounded were segregated from other troops for days, quarantined so they could not talk. The dead were buried quietly in military cemeteries across England. Families of the men who died were given minimal information, in many cases nothing beyond a notice that their son or husband had been killed, with no accurate account of how or where. The rehearsal continued. D-Day proceeded on June 6, 1944, and succeeded, and the story of Exercise Tiger did not. For years afterward, the full scale of the disaster remained obscured. Some records were sealed. The event was minimally reported. It was not that no document existed. The action reports, the casualty records, the accounts of the radio failure and the missing escort, all of it existed in military archives. The warning trail was complete and preserved. It was simply not surfaced, not connected, and not told. It took decades and the persistence of survivors and local residents in Devon to bring the story fully into public knowledge. In 1984, a local man named Ken Small, who had spent years investigating, recovered a Sherman tank that had been lost during the exercises and set it up on the shore at Slapton Sands as a permanent memorial. It stands there today. In later years, official memorials followed, and in 2013, a plaque was added naming all of the victims. The United States Center of Military History has since addressed the accusations of a deliberate, sinister cover-up directly, arguing that the secrecy was standard wartime security rather than a scandal buried for its own sake. That position has merit. Wartime operations are classified as a matter of course, but it does not change the underlying facts of the night itself. The escort was reduced to a single ship. The radio frequencies did not match. The warning that the E-boats were coming did not reach the men who needed it. The life vest training was inadequate. Each of these was a known, addressable failure. Together, they killed more men than the beach they were rehearsing for. The investigation that followed the attack led directly to changes. Radio frequencies across Allied naval forces were standardized so that ships and shore stations could warn each other. Life vest training was overhauled. Procedures for rescuing men from the water were revised. These fixes were applied before D-Day, and they saved lives on June 6th. In that narrow sense, the men who died at Slapton Sands died improving the operation that came after them. But that is the cruelest version of a warning ignored. The lessons were available in advance. The E-boat threat was known. The frequency mismatch was a solvable technical problem. The escort gap was a scheduling failure that could have been covered. The exercise was made maximally realistic on the assumption that the danger was simulated, when the danger in those waters was real. The failure was not that nobody saw it coming. The failure was that they did. If you want to keep following the warnings the world ignored, subscribe. Every disaster leaves a paper trail. We follow it.